Okay, so I am recording this for you to help walk you through your homework. If you just have 1 or 2 questions, it's better to come in during tutorials, just because this is going to walk you through every single question, and you're going to have to answer the questions for every single question. So if you are struggling on just 1 to 2 things, it's better to just come in during tutorials. But if you're struggling on every single problem, this would be the ideal video for you to watch. All right, so we're going to start with question number 2, since question number 1 is X'd out. The circumference of a circle is c centimeters. The diameter is 6 centimeters. Write an expression that best represents the value of pi. Okay, this last little phrase right here at the end is really weird. But if you remember, for whatever the reason, the state of Texas really, really wants us to know that pi equals circumference divided by what? Diameter. Circumference over diameter. So let's take a look. It says that our circumference is what? It says our circumference is c. So what goes on the top? C. The bottom one says, so then we need to have our diameter. It says that the diameter of the circle is what? The diameter is 6. So what would we put on the bottom? 6. So you should have that pi equals c over 6. All right, the next one says, during art class, Mo made a model in the shape of a square pyramid. The net of the model is shown in the diagram. Okay, so first thing, it tells us that we need to find lateral surface area and total surface area. So which shapes are our laterals? Our triangles are our laterals. So for lateral surface area, I just need to go through and I just need to find the area of those laterals. All right, so we're going to start by just taking a look at this triangle because I see information on this triangle. What is the height of the triangle? 9. What's the base of the triangle? 8. Here is how we know it's 8. This shape right here is a what? That's a square. We know that because it tells us that it's a square pyramid. So we know that this right here is a square. And if one of our sides is 8, then all of our sides are 8, okay? So we know that the base is 8 and the height is 9. So now I need to go through and I need to write my area formula for my triangle, which is base times height divided by 2. What would I put in for this formula? I would have 9 times 8 divided by 2. Then I know that 9 times 8 is 72. And I would do 72 divided by 2. And what is 72 divided by 2? Well, if we walk through it, we know that 2 goes into 7 3 times. 3 times 2 is 6. Subtract, and that gives us 1. Drop down that 2, and 2 goes into 12 6 times. So we find that the area of one of our triangles is 36. Well, if the area of one of our triangles is 36, what's the area of all of our triangles? 36. So what do I do to find the lateral surface area? I'm going to add them all together. So I would have 36 plus 36 plus 36 plus 36. Or you can multiply it by 4. So I'm going to do 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6. That's going to give me 24. So I'm going to write down a 4, carry my 2. 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 is going to give us 12. And then 12 plus 2 is going to give us 14. So we would have 144 for that lateral surface area. Okay, the next thing that I have to find the area of is going to be my square. And we're doing that so we can find the total surface area, which is just the area of all of the shapes added up together. Okay, so now I'm going to take a look at my square. My square has a base of 8 and a height of 8. So for my area, I do area equals base times height. And what would you plug into that? 8 times 8. So what's our area? 64. All right, now how would I find the total surface area? There are 2 things that we could do. We could either say 36 plus 36 plus 36 plus 36 plus 64, or I can take my lateral surface area and I can add it to my 64. I'm going to do that because that's going to take less work. So I'm going to do 144 plus 64. It's going to give us 208. Okay, that's it for that one. All right, this one says, what is the solution set for negative 4x minus 10 is less than or equal to 2? So the first thing I'm going to do every time is draw a line through my equal sign. Then after that, I'm going to circle my x and its coefficient. Now, this right here is a what? A negative. So the negative means I have to do what to my inequality sign? It means I have to flip it. So I have to flip the inequality sign because x is what? Negative. Okay. Now, the next thing I do, I can't touch negative 4x, so I look at what's next to negative 4x. What is next to negative 4x is negative 10. And what do you do to get rid of negative 10? You add 10 to both sides. Then we're going to draw a little equal sign. Negative 10 and positive 10 are going to cancel out. So what am I going to write right here? Negative 4x. And then, don't forget to flip your inequality sign, because remember, x was negative, so I had to flip it at some point. And then I have 2 plus 10. And what's 2 plus 10? 12. Okay, now I'm going to ask myself, what operation is happening between negative 4 and x? Multiplication. How do I get rid of multiplication? Division. So I divide both sides by what? Negative 4. Remember, you have to take everything with you. All right, so these two negative 4s are going to cancel out and leave me with just x. And then, what is a positive 12 divided by a negative 4? Well, what's a positive divided by a negative? A negative. And then what's 12 divided by 4? 3. Okay, for this problem right here, it says determine if the equation below is true when d equals negative 4, which means I'm trying to see if when I solve this, I get negative 4 as my answer. So my first step every time is to draw a line through the equal sign. After that, I circle my variable, which in this case is d, and its coefficient. Now, if you look, 6 is attached, but the sign in front of that 6 is a negative, so I need to make sure I circle that negative as well, because that belongs to the 6. 15, actually, we'll talk about that in just a second. Now, if this was an inequality, I would flip this, but this is an equal sign. You can flip an equal sign if you want to. Okay, how do I get rid of this 15? First question I'm going to ask myself, is it positive or negative? Is 15 right here positive or negative? It's positive. It's positive because it doesn't have a sign in front of it at all. It's just 15. And how do you get rid of a positive 15? You subtract 15 from both sides. So that's going to cancel out those 15s and leave me with just negative 6d equals, and then I have 39 minus 15. So what's 9 minus 5? 4. And then what's 3 minus 1? 2. Okay, then after that, I'm just trying to get rid of the negative 6 attached onto d. So what operation is happening here? Multiplication. How do you get rid of multiplication? Division. So what do we divide both sides by? Negative 6. And that gives us, well, we have a positive divided by a negative. And what's a positive divided by a negative? A negative. And then what's 24 divided by 6? 4. So, is this statement true when d equals negative 4? Yes, it is. And that's how you figure that out. All right, so this one says Simon travels 576 miles in 9 hours. I see a 9 right there, so I'm going to write 9. At this rate, how far does Simon travel in 1 hour? So I'm going to write a 1 right there. All right, I see miles, and I see how far, which means the same thing as miles. And then I see hours and hours. So if I see the same unit twice, what do? I set up a proportion. That means I'm going to draw my 3 lines. So I have 1, 2, 3. And I put an equal sign in between. And this first line right here goes my units. So what units do you see? I see miles and hours. Okay, in the first sentence, how many miles do we see? 576. In the first sentence, how many hours do you see? I see 9. In the second sentence, How many miles do you see? I don't see any miles in the second sentence, so I'm going to put an X there. How many hours do you see? 1. How do we solve a proportion? We cross multiply. So I do 576 times 1, which gives me 576, equals 9 times x, which gives us 9x. All right, now, after this, I just have an equation. So what operation is happening between 9 and x? Multiplication. How do we get rid of multiplication? Division. So we divide both sides by what? 9. All right, let's go through it together. I have 576 divided by 9. 9 doesn't go into 5 because 9 is bigger than 5. How many times does 9 go into 57? 6 times. 9 times 6 is 54. What do I do now? Subtract. 57 minus 54 gives me 3. What do I do now? Drop down to 6. How many times does 9 go into 36? 4. What do I do with 9 and 4? Multiply. What's 9 times 4? 36. What do I do now? Subtract, and that gives me 0. Since I have 0 and I'm all out of numbers over here, I'm all done. So my answer is 64 miles. Okay, a rectangular prism has a height of 14.6 inches, and I'm going to underline rectangular. The rectangular base of the prism has dimensions of 12.5 by 2 inches. So the first question it's going to ask us is, it says B stands for what? B stands for area of the base. Well, what is the shape of my base? My base is a rectangle. And what is the area formula for a rectangle? Length times width. So over here, instead of saying volume equals area of the base times height, I have to replace big B with length times width, because that is the area formula for my base. So I'd have length times width times height. So what would I plug in? I would have 14.6 times 12.5 times 2. I'm going to start by doing 12.5 times 2. That just seems the easiest to me, so that's what I'm starting with. I have 12.5 times 2. What's 5 times 2? 10. So I write down a 0, carry my 1. What's 2 times 2? 4. 4 plus 1. 5. What's 2 times 1? 2. How many decimal places do I have? 1. So that right there is 25. So I'd have 14.6 times 25. All right, now we'll do 14.6 times 25. What's 6 times 5? 30. So I write down a 0, carry my 3. What's 5 times 4? 20. What's 20 plus 3? 23. So I write down a 3, carry my 2. What's 5 times 1? 5. 5 plus 2. 7. I finished with my 5. So I'm on my next row now. So what do? Add a 0. All right, what's 2 times 6? 12. So I write down a 2, carry my 1. What's 2 times 4? 8. 8 plus 1. 9. And then I have 2 times 1, which gives me 2. I finish with my 2. So now what do I do with these? I add them together. What's 0 plus 0? 0. 3 plus 2? 5. 7 plus 9? 16. So I write down a 6, carry my 1. 1 plus 2? 3. How many decimal places do I have? 1. So my answer is going to be 365. Okay, so for this one it says triangle ABC is similar to triangle DEF. Which proportion can be used to find the length of DE in centimeters? Okay, so it wants me to go through and set up these proportions. Now, already for you, I went through and I said, okay, 4 is on shape 1, 3 is on shape 1, DE is on shape 2, and 9 is on shape 2. And remember, these either have to be the same going across or they have to be the same going up and down. If they're not the same, then we can automatically mark those off. So if I look here, these are diagonal to each other. They can't be diagonal to each other. They either have to be up and down or side to side. So because of that, I automatically know that B is not a correct answer. So what about this one? Could this one be a correct answer for C? No, because shape 1 and shape 1 are diagonal from each other. So since they're diagonal from each other, that's automatically not going to be an answer. So then I'm left with the last two, and I just need to verify to make sure that these are correct. The way I could do that is I go through and I say this corresponds with this. So if we take a look, 4 corresponds with what? DE. 3 corresponds with what? 9. 5 corresponds with what? 15. So 4 with DE, 3 with 9, and then 5 with 15. And I have to make sure that those are across from each other or on top of each other. So I have 4, and 4 corresponds with DE, so that's good. And then I have 3, and 3 corresponds with 9. So that one's good. So this one is probably correct. We'll go through and check the other one. For this one, it says 9, so that's here, corresponds with 3. Okay, well that's there, so that's good. And then it says DE, which is here, corresponds with 5. Well, those two don't correspond with each other, so that one can't be correct. So it's got to be A. This one says 25% of students at Shady Tree Junior High participate in athletics. If 138 students participate in athletics, how many total students attend Shady Tree High? Okay, first of all, it says percent. As soon as I see the word percent, I know I'm working with one of two formulas. The first formula is my part over whole formula. And my second formula is going to be my change over original formula. The easiest way to do this is I ask myself, did something change? So did the percent of students change? Did it go from 25 to 37% or something like that? No. Did the number of students attending the school change? So did I go from 138 students to 500 students? No. So nothing changed, which means I'm working with the part over whole formula. So then I have part over whole equals, and then it's always what over what? Percent over 100. Now I just need to take a look at my numbers. It says 25%. So that's going to go in my percent spot. I know that the number below that is always going to be 100. Then I just have to figure out what it's asking for. It says, if 138 students participate in athletics, how many total students attend Shady Tree Junior High? So what are we looking for? Are we looking for a part or a whole? I'm looking for a whole. So I'm going to put X here, which means that 138 goes here. So the number of students that are participating in athletics are only part of the students that go to the school. I'm looking for how many students go to the school. Okay, now I just have a proportion. How do I solve a proportion? I cross multiply. So I have 138 times 100. Remember, if you're ever multiplying times 100, just tack on the 2 zeros at the end. So write your original number down, 138, and then just tack on those 2 zeros. Equals X times 25. And X times 25 is what? 25X. Okay, now I ask myself, all right, what operation is happening between 25 and X? Multiplication. And how do we get rid of multiplication? Division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 25. All right, now I have 13,800 divided by 25. 25 doesn't go into 1. It's too small. It doesn't go into 13. That's also too small. It does go into 138. Let's see how many times. So I've got 25 times 1, which gives me 25, times 2 gives me 50, times 3 gives me 75, times 4 gives me 100, times 5 gives me 125, and then times 6 gives me 150. I'm stopping there because if you look right here, this is 138, and 150 is too big. So that means I have to go back one. So how many times does it go in? 5. And what is 25 times 5? Well, we just did that. It's 125. Subtract it. 8 minus 5 is 3. 3 minus 2 is 1. Drop down that 0. Now I have, how many times does it go into? 130. So I come back over here and I say, okay, how many times would it go? Well, once again, 150 right here is too big. So I have to go back. And so how many times does it go in? 5. So I have 25 times 5, which once again is 125. Subtract, and that gives me 5. Drop down that 0. How many times does 25 go into 50? Let's look over here. Here's 50 right here. How many times does it go in? 2. 25 times 2 gives me 50. Subtract, and that gives me 0. So the answer is going to be 552 students. All right, this one says, what is the length of PS? So since I don't know what PS is, I'm going to go ahead and mark it with an X. Then how do I solve for the missing side? What do I set up? I set up a proportion. So that means I'm going to put my corresponding sides with my corresponding sides. And I'm going to set it up like that. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say just 2.4. And 2.4 corresponds with what? X. Then over here, I'm going to put what goes on the same shape as 2.4. So what's on the same shape as 2.4? 4.8. And then what corresponds with 4.8? 12. How do you solve a proportion? You cross multiply. So we've got 2.4 times 12. All right. What's 4 times 2? 8. 2 times 2. 4. All right, I finished with my 2. So now I'm on my next row now. So I add a 0. What's 1 times 4? 4. What's 2 times 1? 2. Add it together. 8 plus 0 is 8. 4 plus 4 is 8. 2 plus nothing is 2. How many decimal places do I have? 1. So this gives me 28.8 equals 4.8 times x, which is 4.8x. What operation is happening between 4.8 and x? Multiplication. How do I get rid of multiplication? Division. So I divide both sides by 4.8. So I have 28.8 divided by 4.8. Okay, I've got a problem. What's my problem? I have a decimal on the outside. So I'm going to move this decimal over once. So what do I have to do to the inside decimal? Move it over once. So now I have 48 going into 288. All right, I'm just going to list out my 48s off to the side. I have 48 times 1, which gives me 48. Add another 48, and that gives me 96, which is times 2. Add another 48, and that gives me 144, which is times 3. Add another 48, and that gives me 192. And that's times 4. Add another 48. Oop, sorry, that's a mistake. This is a 0. You guys can't read that. That's a 0. Okay, there we go. And then this is a 4, and then carry the 1. All right, and then that gives me 240. And then I add another 48. Sorry, that's times 5. Add another 48. And that gives me 288, which is times 6. And hey, that's 288 right there. So how many times does 48 go into 288? 6. So x equals 6. All right, the next one says, some of the dimensions of a triangular prism are shown in the diagram. The height of the prism is 48 centimeters. What is the volume of the triangular prism in cubic centimeters? Okay, so right here it says the height is 48. So I'm going to write a 48 right there. Okay, this is a prism. So which formula am I using? I'm using my prism formula. Capital B stands for what? area of the base. All right, and then it says triangular prism. So the base is a what? A triangle. What is the area formula for a triangle? Base times height divided by 2. Or in this case, I'm going to put length times width divided by 2. So instead of saying volume equals area of the base times height, I'm going to change my big B to length times width divided by 2. So I would say volume equals length times width divided by 2. And then I still have this height that's right here. And so I had to make sure that I also include that. All right, so then I just do 1.75 times 2 times 48 divided by 2. These 2's right here just straight up cancel out, so I'm left with 1.75 times 48. 5 times 8 is 40, so I write down a 0, carry my 4. 8 times 7 is 56, plus 4 is 60, so I write down a 0, carry my 6. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 6 gives me 14. I'm on my next row now, so I add a 0. 4 times 5 is 20, so I write down a 0, carry my 2. 7 times 4 is 28, plus 2 gives me 30, so I write down a 0, carry my 3. 4 times 1 is 4, and plus 3 is 7. How many decimal places do I have? 2. So that gives me that my volume equals 84. All right, and then the last one says the net of a rectangular prism and its dimensions are shown in the diagram. What is the total surface area? So since I'm finding surface area, that means I go through and I find the area of each of these. So I'm just going to start with this one. Area for this is base times height because it's a rectangle. So I would do 3 times 7.5. 5 times 3 is 15, so I write down a 5, carry my 1. 3 times 7 is 21, plus 1 is 22. How many decimal places do I have? 1. So I've got 22.5. All right, now remember, this is a rectangular prism, and rectangular prisms have twinsies. So if that right there is 22.5, this right here is also 22.5. Okay, then I have this right here, which is my next rectangle. I know that my base right here is 11.5, but I'm missing my height. What would my height be? 3. The reason why is this. This right here is 3. And if that right there is 3, this right here is also 3. So this right here is also 3. So I would say 3 times 11.5, or 11.5 times 3. 5 times 3 is 15. Write down a 5, carry my 1. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. 3 times 1 is 3. So I write down a 3. How many decimal places do I have? 1. So I've got 34.5. And if that one's 34.5, what's that one? 34.5, because I've got twinsies. All right, now the last one we have is going to be this rectangle right here. We've still got an area formula of base times height. I know that my base right here is 7.5. I am missing this right here. What is that right there? That right there is 11.5. And we know that for 2 reasons. First of all, these 2 rectangles are twinsies. So if this right here is 11.5, then this right here is also 11.5. Or I can remember that this is a rectangular prism. And in order to close a box, this side right here and this side right here have to come together to close. And this right here is 11.5. So that means that this right here is 11.5. And to close it, this right here also has to be 11.5. So either way, I know that my base and my height are 11.5 and 7.5. So I'm going to multiply those. I have 11.5 times 7.5. 5 times 5 is 25, so I write down a 5, carry my 2. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. 5 times 1 is 5. I'm on my next row now, so I add a 0. 5 times 7 is 35, so I write down a 5, carry my 3. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 3 is 10, so I write down a 0, carry my 1. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 1 is 8. Add it all together. I have 5, 2. That gives me 86. 86.25 because I have 1 decimal place here and 1 decimal place here, and 1 plus 1 gives me 2 total decimal places. So this right here is 86.25, and remember we have twinsies, so this right here is also 86.25. How do I find the total surface area? What do I do with all of these areas that I just found? I add them up together. So I have 22.5 plus 22.5 plus 34.5 plus 34.5 plus 86.25. Now, if we look here, this has 2 decimal places. These still have to line up. So I have 86.25. And if you notice, there's this little 5 that's hanging over here all by itself. So I got to add zeros to the rest of these. And then I have plus 86.25 again. Now, I can add these all at once. If you can't do that, go through and add them individually. It's going to be okay. All right, so I've got 5 plus 5, which is going to give me 10. So I write down a 0, carry me a 1. I've got 5 plus 5, which is 10. 10 plus 5, which is 15. 15 plus 5, which is 20. 20 plus 2, which is 22. 22 plus 2, which is 24. And then I can't forget to add my 1. So I've got 24 plus 1, which is 25. So I write down a 5, carry my 2. 2 plus 2, which is 4. 4 plus 2, which is 6. 6 plus 4, which is 10. 10 plus 4, which is 14. 14 plus 6, which is 20. 20 plus 6, which is 26. So I write down a 6, carry my 2. 2 plus 2, which is 4. 4 plus 2, which is 6. 6 plus 3, which is 9. 9 plus 3, which is 12. 12 plus 8, which is 20. 20 plus 8, which is 28. And then I just drop down my decimal, and I get 286.5. All right, so you should have all of the show work and everything that you need to get 100 on this paper.